In 1915, a woman arrived late at her sister's funeral. When she arrived, she demanded that her sister's coffin be raised so that she could see her one last time. Upon opening the coffin, her sister, Essie Dunbar, sat up and smiled. She went on to live another 47 years. Meet this girl, who's soon going to leave this world. She is Alyssa Carson, a 22-years-old American space enthusiast and doctoral student who was selected for one-way trip with the permission of her father on Mars, which means she can't return to Earth, and this is stated by NASA itself. This trip is scheduled for 2030, and she is going to sacrifice her whole life for science. Comment down below if you'll dare to do this too. In 1954, a man arrived at Tokyo Airport. He had passport issued by a country named as Taured, which did not exist. He had visa of all countries, and said his country is 1,000 years old. Police locked him in high secure room and he vanished. Some people say he came from parallel universe. Comment your opinion on this. Do you know? Rudolf Diesel, who invented diesel engine, committed suicide in 1913 because he thought his invention would not be successful. When conjoined twin Daisy Hilton died, her sister Violet remained alive and attached to her for several days before they were both found dead. In 1970, a mother purchased an antique Raggedy Ann doll from a hobby store. The doll was a present for her daughter Donna on her birthday. Soon they discovered that the doll can move on its own and it could write too. Annabelle is now locked in a glass box in the Warren Occult Museum where it still moves and growls at visitors. Touching the Queen of Siam used to be punishable by death, until the law itself caused 3 deaths in 1880. Queen Sunanda Kumaratana had many witnesses when her boat capsized, but she, her daughter, and her unborn baby still drowned due to a royal guard who warned that touching her was forbidden. He was put to death for being too strict, but if he'd saved her, he likely would have been executed anyway. In 1837, a British man sued a woman who bit off half of his nose after he tried to kiss her without consent. The judge ruled against him, stating that, when a man kisses a woman against her will, she is fully entitled to bite his nose off if she so pleases. The owner of Macy's died on the Titanic. He refused to get a lifeboat before women and children, and his wife refused to leave without him. She said, "I will not be separated from my husband. As we have lived, so will we die, together." They were last seen standing on the deck, arm in arm. Romeo and Juliet was not a love story. It was a 3-day relationship between 13-year-old and a 17-year-old that caused 6 deaths. Actress Hedy Lamarr was once dubbed the most beautiful woman in the world. She was also a mathematician and inventor of frequency-hopping spread spectrum, a technology used for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Her idea was brushed off, others took credit for it, and she spent her life wishing people would notice her brains instead of just her beauty. When a man from Brazil was born with an upside-down head, doctors told his mother to let him starve to death. He has a rare condition called congenital arthrogryposis. He is now an accountant and an international motivational speaker. In the early 1900s, women used hat pins to fend off sexual harassers in the streets. These pins were so effective in fending off assaulters that legislation was proposed to curb these accessories to assault. Men would often come away with wounds that were not serious, but very painful. Napoleon Bonaparte's penis was removed from his dead body during autopsy, displayed at a museum, and eventually sold for $2,700 in the 1970s. The youngest mother in history, Lena Medina, was just 5 years 7 months when she gave birth to her 2.75 kilograms son. Now the question arises, who was the father? There are currently hundreds of deceased people in the U.S., including baseball legend Ted Williams, whose bodies are frozen in liquid nitrogen in hopes that future technology will be able to revive them. A man named Mundine Joe escaped prison so many times that police built a special cell for him, from which he escaped as well. Joe Arity, who had an IQ of 46 and is known as the happiest prisoner on death row. He went into the gas chamber with a smile. It turned out he was innocent. The record for most babies born to one woman is 69. Mrs. Vasilyev from Russia gave birth to 16 pair of twins, 7 sets of triplets and 4 sets of quadruplets. Charlie Chaplin was a teenager. He went to a pub and asked for a glass of water, but got so spooked by the gentleman serving the drink that he fled. It was found several weeks later that the man was a serial killer who gave poisonous water to his new brides and watched them suffer to death. In 1971, a construction crew discovered the tomb of Lady Di, whose mummified body was undisturbed for over 2,000 years. She was so well preserved, she still had her hair and her joints could still bend. Her final meal was still intact in her stomach. While investigating the remains of a meteorite outside of Moscow in 1998, Russian scientists discovered a rock with a screw firmly fixed inside. Geologists estimate the age of the rock to be 300 to 320 million years old, older than the existence of dinosaurs. Evidence shows that the iron atoms of the screw and the silicon atoms of the rock have in fact spread and fused, suggesting the screw is by no means a recent addition to the rock. The Necronomicon is a cursed book that's said to contain the power to resurrect them dead. Roughly translated, its title means an image of the law of the dead, and it's described as being bound in human skin. In 1938, the German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig found a strange-looking ancient clay jar and others like it as the part of a collection in the National Museum of Iraq that were attributed to the Parthian Empire, an ancient Asian culture that ruled most of the Middle East from 247 BC to AD 228. Later in 1940, Koenig described the 2,200-year-old clay jar as the oldest known electric battery in existence. The jar itself has been dated to sometime around 200 BC. The forearm of a man who lived between the 12th and 16th century, a copper plate was fitted to support a fracture. Bone growth shows the man survived the operation and the injury healed quite well. It was found at the Varnum Monastery in Västergötland, Sweden. The largest man-made structure in history was the Walls of Benin in Nigeria, presently. They were 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China and contained 100 times more material than the Cheops Pyramid. There is a 4,000-year-old rock formation in Saudi Arabia called a Nasla, which appears to be cut in half with laser-like precision. Nobody knows for sure how it happened. Some say ancient civilizations may have been more advanced than our history books tell us. In 2009, archaeologists in Venice uncovered the remains of a 16th-century female vampire. She had a brick placed into her mouth so that she could not feed on victims of the plague. This discovery supported the medieval belief that vampires were the cause of plagues. Medusa was raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple after seeking help from her. Due to Athena's jealousy, she cursed Medusa with hair of venomous snakes. She was punished for being raped. I can't believe I thought she was a villain this whole time. The Tolland man is a 400-year-old marsh body and human sacrifice victim from the Iron Age, found at Skövdal in Denmark. His body was so well preserved that even after 2,400 years, scientists could still take his fingerprints and determine what he had last eaten. Blanche Monnier was once a beautiful, young woman with many suitors. But when she told her mother that she wanted to marry a near-penniless lawyer, her mother became furious. She locked her in an attic for 26 years. This starved the young woman, leading to her entering a decrepit state. It wasn't disclosed until 1901 when an anonymous letter alerted the authorities of her situation. A cave in France has the footprints of an 8 to 10-year-old boy left in the mud 26,000 years ago, alongside the paw prints of either a wolf or a large dog, the oldest evidence of human/canine relationships ever found. In 1963, a man knocked down a wall of his home. Behind it, he discovered a mysterious room and soon discovered an intricate tunnel system with additional cave-like rooms. What he had discovered was the ancient Derinkuyu underground city in Turkey. About 150,000 years ago, a Neanderthal fell into a cave well and got stuck. After the Altamira man died, his body was slowly covered in calcite, which caused his skeleton to fuse with the cave and eventually provided the oldest sample of Neanderthal DNA ever obtained. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. This was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Back in 1925, Gladys Roys and Luan Unger played a bit of tennis on the wing of the biplane that was on flight. Amazing, right? The only Japanese passenger who survived the Titanic lost his job because he was known as a coward in Japan for not dying with the other passengers. Jesters sometimes gave bad news to the king that no one wanted to deliver. In 1340, the French king's jester told him that his fleet was destroyed by the English, and joked that the English don't even have the guts to jump into the water like our brave French. A fisherman in Philippines found a pearl weighing 34 kilograms and estimated around $100 million. Not knowing its value, the pearl was kept under his bed for 10 years as a good luck charm. In the late 1800s, according to a popular internet rumor, people suffering from headaches would travel to their local physician, or possibly blacksmith, stick their heads into a metal pot, and be treated for their affliction by having the doctor hit the pot with a sledgehammer. This delicate treatment, according to the internet, was known as vibration therapy. In 1724, a Scottish woman was sentenced to be hanged, but she survived and the court ruled she couldn't be prosecuted further. She was given the nickname Half-Hang-It Maggie and lived for another 40 years. This is Grey Pyramid in the woods of Scotland. The pyramid has a sentimental meaning to it, as it was built to symbolize Queen Victoria's love for Prince Albert after his death. Apparently, Prince Albert loved nature and the great outdoors, so the memorial was built in one of his beloved spots, not too far from the Royal Balmoral estate.